I wouldn't necessarily peg the transition from being employed to being the employer on age. I think it's more what is paramount to the success is your experience. That starts with obviously your primary education, but I have found the best education I received was post-graduation, the school of hard knocks, being in the trenches of real estate, business, negotiations, identifying the opportunities in the marketplace. Um, and the trigger for launching into your own firm, I don't think can be predetermined or anticipated. I really think it's something that comes to you, whether that's an opportunity that finds you or you find that opportunity. And it's also, I think, a culmination of when you feel you have the confidence and the foundation to move ahead without having errors that can have significant financial consequences. There are going to be failures. There's no perfection. It's not 100% of success in anything. I don't think that's unique to real estate. However, the more experience you get under a successful firm, under a successful mentor, is really going to be the best preparation. And then, when you decide to do it is going to be not age-based, but really experience-based. Well, as you know, real estate is a very diverse business. There's commercial, there's industrial, there's residential, and they're all very different, even though they fall under the same umbrella. My undergraduate degree is actually civil engineering, which gave me a strong foundation on design and construction. And then ultimately I did go to graduate school for an MBA in finance, which an engineering degree leaves very little flexibility in terms of your curriculum to study, whether it's economic principle, the arts, or anything like that. It's very, at least where I went to school, is very narrow. But it was a very important piece of my whole puzzle in terms of the assemblage of different experiences. Real estate includes finance, it includes construction, it includes negotiation, it includes legal. The clearest risk is execution risk. It's a greenfield project. The site that we've acquired is 40 acres of grass and trees. There's nothing there, literally. The project is a next phase of a endeavor that I embarked on with my business partner, who is a Michelin chef in Rochester, where we opened a restaurant in 2019. We feel the best restaurant in Rochester, but what we're looking to do is capitalize on the incredible growth that the Finger Lakes have experienced over the past 5 to 6 years. And interestingly, COVID accelerated that growth because it really put the Finger Lakes on people's radar that otherwise really wouldn't have found it based on the flight from the larger populated areas. We feel, in any real estate endeavor, you have to identify an opportunity. And what is that opportunity? That opportunity is where there is slack between the existing demand and the supply of a certain segmentation. In this case, we feel it's hospitality. The wine industry in the Finger Lakes, which has been very predominant for many, many years, is finally starting to catch up to its peers on the West Coast, not only in production, but in terms of quality. All the old wineries are being turned upside down, some by Cornell grads, whereby it's about quality and not quantity. What that does is creates a ripple effect throughout the region, and it provides visitors a lot of opportunities for enjoyment, whether that's a wine tour, whether that's a boat ride on the lake, the waterfalls, the parks. And the segment that we're focusing on is more of a boutique hospitality opportunity, fine dining, hotel, event space, and also agriculture, where there's a farm component to it, a true farm-to-table experience. That higher-end segmentation of the hospitality currently, in our opinion, does not exist, and we're working to capitalize on that opportunity and be on the leading edge of what we feel will be more projects downstream as the growth of the Finger Lakes hospitality segment continues to be a very steep incline. Part of the arbitrage in real estate is specific knowledge of the marketplace where you're building. And that specific knowledge is 100% local knowledge. And the company I work for was primarily based out of, or the portfolio was primarily in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic, but we did pursue some developments, including Chicago, whereby they were not successful. And I feel part of the reason they were not successful is because we didn't have that specific knowledge of those areas. And we didn't know the region as well as we did know the other ones where we did have success. So I think it's important to understand the marketplace and where you're going. And how do you do that? I mean, you have to have the right people in place, whether that's people locally or in the case of a retail project, are the retailers telling you that they want to go to this market? And if they are, then you say, okay, come with me, I'll build it, and you know, will you come? Case of this development in Finger Lakes, we know the area so well. I've grown up in the area. The Finger Lakes, I have a place on Keuka Lake, so we've experienced firsthand this growth in the hospitality and leisure segment, and so we're kind of living it, so we know it's there. But someone coming from, you know, the West Coast probably doesn't even know where the Finger Lakes are, so how are they going to really determine that? So part of it is if you have the opportunity to really see and feel what's happening, obviously that validates your assumptions. I think there's a couple. One is the expectation of entitlements. Entitlements for real estate development, again, especially for a greenfield project, probably is the biggest unknown because it's a political variable. As you would imagine, in a greenfield project, there is typically a fair amount of resistance to development, whether it's the immediate neighbor, whether it's concerns for traffic, impacts on the environment. There's never a real estate development greenfield project that doesn't have some form of opposition to it. The mistakes I think people make is the expectation that because it's going to create jobs, it's an investment in a community, that most municipalities will embrace these projects. That's very uncommon and typically can sink a project. If I know of some projects that can go and take 15 years for entitlements and approvals from the municipality, increasing the budget by millions upon millions of dollars. And as important is as you're delayed in your project, the marketplace that you based your project on, the expectation, the demand can change on you to the point where your project is not financially viable anymore. So I think that's probably the biggest one. The other one is obviously with construction, things change, material costs, labor costs. We just saw that. We saw on this project alone that we had a construction budget back in 2020. The current budget now is 40% higher than it was in 2020. A lot of that escalation was a result of the pandemic. Costs are flattening, but they're never going to go back down to what they were before. Financing, interest rates. The interest rate environment is very unknown. You start a project, takes 2 years to build. You have a floating rate construction loan, which typically will float another year or two subsequent to the opening. And if the environment becomes problematic, whereby, the Fed funds rate jumps 200, 300 basis points, again, that unknown and an uncontrollable can really turn your pro forma upside down. So I think the biggest mistake someone can make is not planning accordingly, or somehow, I don't know if you can necessarily hedge on an entitlement, but giving yourself the contingencies on both money and time to insulate yourself from what can be very problematic delays.